Here's your voiceover script. A United States submarine just sank an Iranian warship with a torpedo in international waters. At least 87 Iranian sailors are dead, and Iran is now promising that America will, quote, bitterly regret it. And if that name alone doesn't tell you everything you need to know about where we are right now, then the next few minutes will. Let's start with what just happened at sea, because this is the moment that changed everything. A United States submarine, moving silently beneath the surface of international waters, locked onto an Iranian warship and fired a torpedo. The ship went down. At least 87 Iranian sailors lost their lives. 32 survivors were pulled from the wreckage and rushed to hospital. The operation was given its own name by the Pentagon, Silent Death. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, stood at a podium at the Pentagon and said it plainly. A United States submarine sank an enemy warship that thought it was safe in international waters. He noted that this was the first enemy vessel sunk by a torpedo since the Second World War. He wasn't apologizing. He was declaring it a victory. And then he added something that should make every single person watching this pay very close attention. Like in that war, when we were still called the Department of War, we are fighting to win. Fighting to win. Those 3 words carry enormous weight, because they tell you that whoever is in charge right now is not interested in de-escalation. They are not signaling restraint. They are signaling dominance. And Iran heard that message loud and clear. Within hours, the Iranian response began, not through diplomacy, not through back-channel negotiations, through missiles and drones, fired at targets across the entire region, fired at Israel, fired at American military bases, fired at neighboring countries that had nothing to do with the initial operation. The Middle East woke up Thursday morning to the sound of sirens and explosions, from Tel Aviv to Doha, from Jerusalem to Abu Dhabi, from Baku to the skies above the Persian Gulf. Let that sink in for a moment. This is not one country striking one target. This is a cascading regional explosion, spreading outward like rings in water, pulling in countries, airports, civilian infrastructure, and innocent people who simply had the misfortune of being nearby. In Israel, air raid sirens screamed across Tel Aviv and Jerusalem simultaneously. The Israeli military tracked multiple incoming missile attacks and activated its air defense systems. Interceptions were visible in the sky. Bright flashes cutting through the night, the kind of images that look almost beautiful until you remember what they actually are. The Israeli army then released video footage showing the destruction of Iranian missile launchers and air defense systems. The message from Israel was clear. Every rocket fired at us will cost you something. In Qatar, the situation escalated in a way that few people were prepared for. Residents living near the American embassy in Doha were evacuated. Qatar's Ministry of Defense confirmed that the country had been targeted by a missile strike and that its air defense systems had successfully intercepted the projectile. The ministry asked the public to remain calm and not to trust unofficial sources of information. Think about that. Qatar, one of the wealthiest and most diplomatically cautious nations in the Gulf, found itself directly in the crossfire of a war it played no part in starting. In Abu Dhabi, debris fell on an industrial zone. 6 people were wounded, Pakistani and Nepalese workers, people who came to the Gulf to build a better life, now caught in the middle of a military confrontation between superpowers. 6 people hurt by falling debris from what appears to have been an intercepted attack. 6 ordinary people whose names we will probably never know, whose stories will never make headlines, but who represent the human cost of every single one of these strikes. And then there is Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijani Ministry of Defense announced that Iran used drones to attack the international airport of Nakhchivan and other civilian infrastructure on Azerbaijani territory. The ministry issued a formal condemnation, stating that Iran bears full responsibility for the incident. Iran did not acknowledge targeting Azerbaijan, but the drones came from somewhere, and the Azerbaijani government knows exactly where. This is the part that gets overlooked in the broader narrative. We talk about Iran versus the United States. We talk about Iran versus Israel. But what is unfolding right now is something far more chaotic and far more dangerous than a two-sided conflict. Iran is firing into multiple countries simultaneously. It is hitting civilian airports. It is striking near embassies. It is sending drones into the airspace of nations that are not even parties to this conflict. This is not a surgical military operation. This is a country lashing out in every direction at once. And the reason is not hard to understand. Iran is humiliated. Iran is watching its warships get sunk by submarines it couldn't even detect. Iran is watching its missile systems get destroyed on video and broadcast to the world. Iran is watching Pete Hegseth stand at a Pentagon podium and call the killing of 87 of its sailors a victory worth celebrating. And Iran's leadership is responding the only way authoritarian regimes know how to respond when they feel cornered, with escalation, with rhetoric, and with violence. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi called the sinking of the warship an atrocity at sea, and then Ayatollah Abdullah Javadi Amoli appeared on state television and said something that crossed a line that senior religious figures almost never cross publicly. He called for bloodshed, Israeli blood, and the blood of, and I am quoting directly here, Trump. He told his audience to fight oppressive America. He said, and these are his words, "Its blood is on my shoulders." This is one of the highest-ranking clerics in Shia Islam, a man whose words carry religious authority for millions of people, standing in front of a camera and essentially issuing a religious sanction for violence against the President of the United States and the State of Israel. That is not political rhetoric. That is something else entirely. Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth was delivering his own message, and it was just as stark. He told reporters that the United States and Israel would continue to strike Iran hard. He said that the U.S. was achieving a decisive victory, and he added that within a matter of days, American forces would achieve what he called total control of Iranian airspace. Total control of Iranian airspace. In days. If that claim is accurate, it means that Iran's air defense network, the system it has been building and refining for decades, the system it has purchased, reverse-engineered, and positioned as the backbone of its national defense, would essentially cease to exist as a functional military asset. Iran would be exposed, open sky above its territory, with no meaningful ability to stop whatever comes next. That is an extraordinary military claim, and it is being made not by an anonymous analyst or an intelligence leak, but by the Secretary of War of the United States, standing in front of cameras, on the record, with full confidence. Now step back and look at the full picture, because what is happening right now is not just a military operation, it is a transformation of the entire strategic order of the Middle East, happening in real time at a speed that most governments and most populations are not prepared for. For decades, Iran operated as the dominant destabilizing force in the region. It funded proxy militias across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. It developed a ballistic missile program that held neighboring capitals under permanent threat. It pursued a nuclear program that kept the entire international community in a state of perpetual anxiety. It positioned itself as the great counterpower to American influence in the region, the force that could not be directly confronted without catastrophic consequences. That calculation is now being tested, directly, publicly, with torpedoes and airstrikes and Pentagon press conferences. And the question that nobody can fully answer right now is this: where does it end? Because Iran has not surrendered. Iran has not signaled any willingness to negotiate from a position of weakness. Iran is still firing. Iran is still threatening. Iran is still sending drones into Azerbaijani airspace and missiles toward Qatari embassies. A wounded and humiliated Iran, backed into a corner with its warships at the bottom of the ocean and its air defenses being systematically dismantled, is arguably more dangerous than a confident Iran operating at full strength. Desperate regimes make desperate decisions. The region is holding its breath, and the world should be paying attention, because this is not a story that stays in the Middle East. Every missile fired near an American embassy is a potential trigger for a wider confrontation. Every drone that hits a civilian airport disrupts global supply chains, energy markets, and the movement of millions of people. Every escalation increases the probability of a miscalculation, a strike that goes too far, a ship that gets targeted by mistake, a civilian casualty that turns regional conflict into something no one can contain. We are at a hinge point in history, the kind of moment that gets a name in the history books, and it is happening right now, on your screen, in real time. Stay close to this story, because it is moving fast, because the decisions being made in Washington, in Tehran, in Tel Aviv, and in Doha, in the coming hours and days, will shape what this region looks like for the next generation. And because the people caught in the middle, the workers in Abu Dhabi, the residents of Doha evacuating near an embassy, the sailors pulled alive from a sinking warship, the tourists stranded in hotels listening to explosions, deserve to have their reality understood, not just summarized. This is Operation Epic Fury, and it is far from over.